Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. And this is episode 81 and final episode of season 2024. Jeez, I don't know what I was about to say. But welcome on in. If you haven't been here before, we're a football podcast. We release an episode every week. During season, 2 episodes every week. We review games, we do stats, we do everything. So welcome on in. If you've been here before, welcome on back. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like button, comment, all of those things, whether you're on Spotify or YouTube. Make sure you do all that. Today's episode is a 2024 Wrapped episode, if you like. We're going to look at the season that was 2024 for both AFL, AFLW, everything in the football world. We're going to run it back, and then we're going to... I don't know how long this episode will go, but that's what we're going for today. This will be the final episode of 2024. We're going to have 2 weeks off with no podcast episodes, and we'll be back with episode 1 of 2025 on the 8th of January, as we fully get into pre-season mode as we head towards opening round for 2025. So let's jump into it. Final episode. We're going to wrap it up the season, and where better to start than having a look at every single club for 2024 in a table. Why not? So I've done a little 2024 Club of the Year system. Did it last year as well. Obviously not on the stream, not on the podcast, because this is the first year of the podcast, but we've got that table. I've got that table at least, and I'll just go through a couple of them as well as we go through. This is post-finals, so obviously the McClellan Trophy, which is awarded $1 million to the AFL team that finishes highest on the McClellan ladder, which is all home and away for both competitions. This is post-finals, so this is their post-finals finishing position. If two teams, well, there's multiple times where 2 teams are knocked out in the same week, the higher ranked in the home and away season is the higher ranked. You get 1 point for winning, obviously down to 18 points for coming last. Add the AFL, AFLW together, you get a total score, which is your points column there in the third column, and obviously ranked first to last on the screen right now. So we'll start at the bottom because, that's typically where we always start, at the bottom, and work our way up. Gold Coast, pretty disappointing year across the board. Finished 13th, could have done better in the AFL men's season, but didn't quite finish off some of their games. Had a bit of trouble away for most of the season, so that kind of hurt them. Finished 13th. AFLW season was worse. Could have got an extra win or two. They had a couple close losses, but they finished 17th on the ladder there, which gives them an overall rating of 18th, which is quite disappointing for them. 1 point ahead of them was the West Coast Eagles, who obviously in the AFL men's competition were a clear 16th. They were a fair way off any of the teams above them. The AFLW was positive, I guess, because they weren't expected to do too well. They won a few games early season. They struggled late, but did okay. Finished well enough to finish 13th and not on the bottom. 2 points above them is Collingwood, who last year was 3rd on this ladder, has dropped all the way down to 16th. So an almighty drop there. Both the men's and women's programs dropping from last year's performances. 9th in the AFL, percentage, of the top 8. AFLW got their first wooden spoon in their short existence. I think it's 8 seasons in. So 18th there, plus a 9, gives them 27, has them 16th. Ahead of them is Richmond, who did finish wooden spoon in the men's competition, but didn't play finals in the AFLW. At times, the AFLW looked like it might have been a little bit more fruitful this season for them, but the end of season wasn't spectacular. And they went from probably being the 4th or 5th best team in the competition down to finishing 7th. So a bit disappointing for them. Melbourne missed finals in both competitions, so that's never ideal. They finished 14th in the men's. Obviously, Petrarca going out hurt them a bit, but women's competition, they started slow, really slow. They got their act together in the second half of the year, but the season's just too short in the AFLW. And they finish 9th there, which puts them in 13th overall, which is equal with St Kilda, who also missed finals in both. Slow start in the men's competition. Came good late, but once again, too late in the season. They finished 12th. AFLW was the exact opposite. They won their first 3 games. I think they only won maybe one more game for the rest of the season after that. Finished up in 11th. Has them sitting 13th overall. Carlton just scraped into the finals in the men's competition in 8th spot. Got eliminated week 1. And then in the women's competition, never really showed much for the season. Finished 14th, and that has the Carlton Blues in 12th overall. 11th is the GWS Giants. Obviously a really good season in the men's competition. Top 4 during the regular home and away season before getting knocked out in straight sets to finish 5th in the AFLW. They did struggle a fair bit most of the season. Finished 16th, equal with Gold Coast, just ahead of them on percentage. Not a great season from them there, but they still managed 11th overall in the club standings. 9th goes to a tie between the Bombers and the Bulldogs. Bombers men's competition, signs that they were going to play finals, didn't finish the season off at all. AFLW was the reverse. They looked in trouble early season. They had a few injuries, but they really got going in that second half of the year. Finished in the finals, didn't manage a win against Fremantle over there, but 8th in the AFLW, gets them 19 points. The Bulldogs also equal on total points, 7th in the AFL men's competition, getting knocked out against Hawthorn in the finals. AFLW, certainly a positive season compared to last season for them. Won a few games, did get flogged in a couple others, but won more games than they were certainly expected to win. So 12th there, not too bad, 19 points overall, 9th on the ladder. Equals 7th. Goes to 2 teams that were really good in the AFLW, but not so good in the AFL men's. First, we got the Kangaroos, 17th in the men's competition, second worst team. Fair way off moving too far up the ladder, you'd think, based on what we saw this year. But they are the supreme number 1 team, by far, by the length of the Flemington Strait. They are the best team in the AFLW competition. And scary enough, they look like they're getting better for next year. So they end up just cracking it into the top 8, thanks to that AFLW score. If the men's team can improve slightly next year, who knows what is possible for them. Adelaide is equal with them. Tough season in the AFL men's competition, 15th, a bit lower than what they would have been expecting. They were hoping for finals. AFLW finished 3rd, got knocked out in the prelim final. A really good season from them. They're clearly in the top 3 teams in the AFLW, I think, as their season shows, as their final result shows, but they just couldn't get it done against North Melbourne in the end. So, I mean, that's how it is. It is what it is. Next up, we've got Sydney Swans, 2nd in the men's competition. They were the dominant outfit most of the season in the AFL men's competition, before just falling away a bit late season and then regathered it a bit heading into finals, through finals, but on grand final day just were outclassed. In the AFLW, they were hit by injuries all season long. I don't know if they would have done too much better. They might have been in contention for finals though. But yeah, just too many injuries. Finished 15th, which has them in the club ratings in 6th. In 5th is Fremantle, which is pretty high for a team that only made finals in one of the competitions and didn't finish in the top 4 in either. But 10th in the AFL men's, fell apart in that last 4 weeks. Couldn't win one game. They only needed one win in that last 4 weeks and they would have played finals. Couldn't do it. Ended up 10th. AFLW, they were always there or thereabouts in finals contention. They did manage to beat Essendon week 1 of the finals before losing to Adelaide. Sixth is a pretty solid season for them in the AFLW. A few more improvements for them, and you never know, they could be top 4 next year. Fourth place goes to Geelong, finished 4th in the AFL men's competition, just missing out on a grand final berth, after leading in a prelim final with only a couple minutes to go, so a little bit disappointing they didn't finish top 2 there. And 10th in the AFLW, started slowly in the season, really got going late, but just left their run too late in the end. Hawthorn, the big improvers, they finished 17th on this ladder in 2023. Both the men's and women's teams came out of nowhere. Hockball was real in 2024. Basically sums up the year, let's be honest, Hockball. Ended up 6th in the AFL men's competition, 5th in the AFLW competition, so no top 4 berths in the end. But 2 semi-final knockouts, funnily enough, both by Port Adelaide Football Club. But they finished 3rd. A really, really good season from that club. From where they were, biggest improvers by an absolute margin. Second, Port Adelaide, another team that did pretty good improvement. The men's team was only slightly better than last year in overall ranking, but the women's team really did improve. They finished overall 11th last year. This year, they finished a clear 2nd. 3rd, obviously, in the AFL men's competition. Sydney comfortably beat them in a prelim final, but overall, not the worst season. Positive signs for them. In the AFLW, extraordinary progress. They were 15th on the ladder last year. They finished 4th here after a really good come-from-behind victory in a semi-final against Hawthorn. Clearly outclassed in the prelim, but at the end of the day, they did really well throughout the season. They've got a lot of good young talent in that women's team. They're only going to get better. The men's team, we'll see how that plays out. And for the second year running, pretty much identical season, just the reverse way around for them. Brisbane Lions, they won the AFL men's competition. They finished 2nd in the AFLW competition. They're the clear number 1 club champion of the year. Last year, it was the reverse way around. 2nd in the men's, 1st in the AFLW. Reversed it this year, got that success in the men's competition, just fell short in the AFLW. But overall, that's the 18 clubs. Brisbane go back to back in the 2 seasons that I've done this. Potentially the only 2 seasons we can fully do it with 18 clubs. 2022, obviously, there was 2 seasons in the one for the AFLW. So yeah, 2-time Brisbane champions. West Coast were bottom of the ladder in 2023, and this year it was Gold Coast. Other notable things on there, obviously a couple big drop-offs. Collingwood, Melbourne are the 2 big ones. Melbourne 2nd down to 13th. Collingwood 3rd down to 16th. Outside of that, the big improvers, Port Adelaide 11th up to 2nd. Hawthorn 17 up to 3. I'm trying to think if there's any other big improvers. Not massively. Fremantle moved a long way. They went from 15th up to 5th, so they were a big improver too. Overall, that is the club champion of the 2024. I think it's a novel way of looking at it. I think overall, if the AFL's listening, better than the McClellan Trophy. Because who cares, home and away? You want your premierships, and you want to do well at the end of the season. So Brisbane, I think, fairly 2 years in a row should be the winners. Interestingly enough, didn't win the McClellan Trophy either of those years. Melbourne won it last year, and then this year was Hawthorn winning it. So 2nd best and 3rd best in terms of club champion of the year. So that's everything to do with each club. A bit of a rundown on their season. We'll jump now into more player-focused awards and stuff. This is all my opinions, of course, but we'll jump into MVPs for both the AFL men's and women's. These are my best players of 2024 for each competition, based on the All-Australian, All Aussie rules rankings that I do. I have a scoring system. It's pumped out these 2 on top. I think, without a doubt, they're Definitely Bontempelli was clearly the best in the men's competition. AFLW competition, there was two. I haven't pulled them up on the board yet. Hang on, there you go. There was two in contention, but we'll jump into that in a minute. Bontempelli, clear best in AFL men's competition. I know Paddy Cripps dominated Brownlow. I know there was plenty of other good players. Numbers-wise, though, Bontempelli was an absolute star. Umpires never really rate him as high as perhaps he deserves. He was voted by his peers as MVP this year. I don't think you can argue. He's an absolute gun. 2 years running, he would have been MVP in the competition. In the AFLW, another player that perhaps doesn't get as much recognition from umpires as she deserves, Jasmine Garner. All year long, I was saying that Ebony Marinoff was the best player in the competition this season. I still kind of think it, based on this year alone. Jasmine Garner's the better player, I think, overall. But based on just this year, I think Ebony Marinoff was probably the best. But numbers popped out Jasmine Garner, and in all honesty, you can't really argue it. They were the best two players this year. Jasmine Garner had another outstanding final series, another outstanding grand final. And yeah, I think I'm happy with her being the AFLW MVP for 2024. Although Ebony Marinoff was an absolute star and only just fell short on Jasmine Garner's scoring in terms of that. We're going to jump now into best players by positions for 2024. We're going to go to the AFL competition first. Here they are. Key defender. This is based on where they spent enough time. It's a complicated system. It's never going to be perfect, but this is just how it pops out in terms of best players by position. Key defender Jeremy McGovern from West Coast. All-Australian. He's an absolute gun in that back line. Few players could have argued up there, but in the end, Jeremy McGovern. I think general defender is a tough one because do you go someone that's actually defending or do you go someone that's using the ball a lot? The rating system most rating systems tend to favour the ball users, ball winners, and Harry Sheasel is that player. He did move into the midfield quite a bit in the second half of the year, but he just played enough time in that general defender role to stay in that position. Midfielder, clearly, I'm going to say Marcus Bontempelli. He was our AFL Men's Player of the Year, and clearly the best midfielder. Next up, we've got Ruckman Maxi Gawn. He is, I won't say it was a dominant display in terms of being ages ahead of the field because there were quite a few ruckmen that were quite close to him. But, I mean, in the end, there was a bit of a gap, not a huge gap, but certainly there's a few ruckmen coming up that are going to be close to pushing him for that top ruckman over the next couple of years. Tristan Zeri was right behind him. Tim English, not too far. Toby Nankervis, Roll Marshall, Jared Witts, Darcy Cameron, all players that could have been in that conversation. Also, worth mentioning, was announced today that he's actually injured now, so he's going to have 2 weeks with no training. Good time for it over Christmas. He probably wouldn't have been training too much anyway. But then he comes back with no contact for 6 weeks. So a little bit of a delayed start in his pre-season. I would expect that he'll still be back for round 1, their first game of the year. But just worth noting that he may have a slower start to the year. Next up, we've got general forwards. I think Dylan Moore, while not maybe the best goal scorer in this list, is clearly the best general forward this year. Medium-sized forward. He was really, really good, especially early season when Hawthorn weren't going that well. He was the one that was keeping them going and really getting them going when their team performance wasn't quite so good. So an outstanding season from him. And then we jump into key forwards. This is an interesting one. I think Jesse Hogan was clearly the best key forward this year. But Jeremy Cameron just wins so much of the ball. So if you classify him as a key forward, which arguably maybe he is, maybe he's not, he plays more of more of a medium general forward, but as a tall, if that kind of makes sense. He had a really good season, as did Jesse Hogan. So I think either one of those could argue was the best. We're not going to jump into the AFLW by position just yet. We're going to do club best and fairest for each club, and then we'll jump into the AFLWs. So this is a list. It obviously is a list. Club by club, going down the left. The next column is who came out on top in terms of my voting for the year. I gave votes for every single match. That's who came out in top for each club. And then in the far right column is who actually won each club's best and fairest. The percentage in the middle is the percentage of total votes for that club that they got. So not for the top percentage of maximum votes they could have got, if that makes sense. So it worked out that I gave 5 votes, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 to the losing team, and the winning team I gave 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. So the best 5 players from each team got votes each game. Winners obviously got double the amount that the losers did. So the more games you lost, the less votes you could score. This was for an overall MVP, which obviously Bontempelli came out on top. But first up, we got Adelaide. Jordan Dawson came out on top in both my MVP and the BNF for Adelaide. Ben Keys did tie him in the Adelaide BNF, but he came out clearly on top in mine. Lachie Neale won them both for Brisbane. Outstanding season from him. Unlucky not to get a Norm Smith. Outstanding season from him all round. Certainly in that second half of the year. They were a very consistent team, though, throughout most of the year. Paddy Cripps clearly won them both. He was by far Carlton's best player. He's their most important player still, and he probably will be for the next couple years. If he can get some more support, though, it will only benefit Carlton. Collingwood, Nick Dacos was clearly their best. Carried the team through early season when they were losing, but also when they started winning games. His first half of the year was outstanding. I mean, his second half of the year was very good still as well. Essendon, Zach Merritt, clearly best player for them, and got both MVP and BNF. Caleb Sarong as well was the same. An outstanding season from him. There was a few players that started to show some really good stuff in the second half of the year, but overall, really good year from him all the way through, but his first 3 weeks was outstanding. For Geelong, Max Holmes is the winner for both. I think it was a very open race for Geelong. Max Holmes came out on top. A few players not far behind him. Obviously, Jeremy Cameron's one that could argue was up there. Myers, a few others. They just had a real consistent spread across their whole team. For Gold Coast, Noah Anderson came out on top with a really good season. He didn't do that well in their BNF, though. Sam Collins won it. Arguably the best tall defender in the competition this year. I obviously didn't have him top, but I had Jeremy McCubbin. But a lot of people would say Sam Collins was the best overall. And, I mean, I think arguably you can make that decision. When not looking at stats, I actually had Sam Collins as the number 1 defender in the competition. Next up, we have GWS. Jesse Hogan won the BNF. I gave it to Tom Green. Tom Green just beat out Jesse Hogan in my voting, whereas in GWS official BNF, it was the other way around. Jesse Hogan just beating Tom Green. So they were both very outstanding seasons. Jesse Hogan carried that forward line. His contested one-on-ones was outstanding all season long, and a big reason why they finished top 4 in the home and away season. Next up, we've got Hawthorn. Jai Newcomb, his second half of the season was fantastic. When Hawthorn were playing well, he was playing very well. So, deserves it. Massive season from him. Melbourne, Maxi Gawn gets my MVP. Jack Viney won the BNF. Bit harsh on Maxi Gawn, I think. I think he had an outstanding season. For North Melbourne, Tristan Xerri was really, really good. Luke Davies-Yanaki was the one that won the BNF, though. I mean, he was close in mine, but I think I had him third with Harry Sheasel in second. So a little bit of no love for Tristan Xerri in the BNF for them. Port Adelaide, Zach Butters clearly was their best player all year round. Absolute outstanding season. For Richmond, I had Toby Nankervis winning it, whereas Richmond's official BNF was to Daniel Rioli. Good season from him. For St Kilda, we got Rowan Marshall for me. Really good season. Callum Wilkie for the St Kilda official BNF. Key defender, another key defender that won the BNF. Him and Sam Collins both getting it. Once again, really good season from him. I had him in maybe in AAR ratings, so my All Aussie ratings. He was third best key defender. A really good season from him, no doubt about it. Rowan Marshall, though, also had an outstanding season. Was arguably second best ruckman, depending on who you ask, this season in the AFL. For Sydney, no doubt about it. Isaac Heaney's season was absolutely outstanding. Obviously, they had multiple players in that midfield that were really good. Chad Warner, Errol Goulden, both outstanding as well. But Isaac Heaney's season was undoubtedly best and fairest / MVP season for Sydney. For West Coast, Elliot Yeo came out on top. Jeremy McGovern, as I said, was the highest rating key defender this season. But Elliot Yeo's season was fantastic. Some of the stuff he did, certainly early season, he was their most important player. And throughout most of the season, when he was playing, he was their most important. In that midfield, Western Bulldogs, without a doubt, Marcus Bontempelli. Adam Treloar did probably have a career best season. Ed Richards was a find in that midfield, but Marcus Bontempelli, just week in, week out, he is their most important player. He is the best player in the competition, bar none. That is all the BNFs for the AFL men's competition. We're going to jump into the AFLW and have a look at the best players by position. So we're going to start in the key defender line. We've got, as you can see, Brianna Tarrant. Yes, I know how to speak. Don't even question it. As number one, I'm just getting the numbers up here. There she is. She played 10 games. Really good season from her. As Sydney's key defender, she was one of, if not their only, really outstanding player that didn't get injured this year. So, she missed one game, but a really good season from her. Other people that were up there in the ratings, Harriet Cordner from Carlton, Chelsea Biddle from Adelaide was really good, Talia Gillard from Melbourne, and then there's some others that were good as well. But yes, as I said, Brianna Tarrant, 23-year-old from Sydney, outstanding season. Plenty of football ahead of her as well. Another young one in Talia Gillard was, fourth or fifth best key defender. She's only 21 as well, so a couple good young players in that key defender role. General defender, Chelsea Randall from Adelaide comes out on top, clearly out on top as well. Played every game for Adelaide this year. Outstanding season, no doubt about it. Really, really good year. Madison Gay from Bombers was really good. Arguably, in some facets, was the best general defender in terms of fantasy scoring and stuff like that. But in overall AAR ratings, it goes to Chelsea Randall. A couple young ones that were good. Emma O'Driscoll from Fremantle. Jenna Richardson from Hawthorn. And then Natalie Grider from Brisbane was outstanding all year long. Serene Watson, Charlotte Thomas, all outstanding this year. Sorry about the hiccups that I apparently have just decided to pick up. Midfielders, where are we? Here we are. As we mentioned in the MVP, Jasmine Garner came out on top in the AAR ratings. Clearly, top two were miles ahead of everybody. In terms of fantasy scoring, Ebony Marinoff was the standout. But in terms of AAR, It goes Jasmine Garner's way, 108.1. Ebony Marinoff was a 105.5, so only a couple points between them. For context, the next best was Ash Riddell, who was a 95.8, so more than 10 points behind Ebony Marinoff. Also, really good, obviously one of the best young players in the competition is Charlie Rowbottom, 21-year-old, outstanding season. She's getting better and better each year, so she's also penned a new deal, so really good signs for her. Emily Bates from Hawthorn was good. Isabel Dawes. Mon Conti from Richmond, obviously outstanding. Ali Anderson from Brisbane. Kate Hoare from Melbourne. Interesting that only 2 of those are under 25, which shouldn't be that surprising, but at the same time there is a lot of good young talent. But just in that pinpoint, pointy end of midfielders at the moment, it's mainly the more senior ones, but Isabel Dawes and Charlie Rowbottom, the 2 outstanding ones under 25. But then Nina Morrison coming through, Ella Roberts coming through, Abby Dowrick was outstanding this year, Sophie Hurley from Sydney. So there are plenty of players, young players coming through in this AFLW competition that over the next couple of years will be pushing to take the mantle off the Jasmine Garners, the Ebony Marinoffs, the Ash Riddells. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We jump into the ruckman position. I don't think there's going to be too many arguments here on who was the best ruckman in the competition this year. Mim Strom was absolutely outstanding. Having just said what we did about the midfielders, the ruckman, it's a young players' game at the moment in the AFLW, which is kind of the reverse of the AFL men's, where players in ruck tend to take a while to get going, and then their later years are where they do their best. At the moment in the women's game, it's the exact opposite. You got Mim Strom, who was the best, in my opinion, 23 years old. You got Lucy Wales from Hawthorn, 21, outstanding season. Poppy Kelly from Richmond is 26, so, I mean, still pretty young. Stephanie Wales from Essendon, 21. Alicia O'Dowd from GWS, 26. Matilda Scholes, 19. Before you get to Emma King, who's 30. So, outstanding young ruckman coming through the competition in the AFLW. Mim Strom, obviously, I think clearly by a mile was the best ruckman in the competition this year. And Lucy Wales clearly was the second best in my opinion as well. We jump into general forwards. This is an interesting position because, Alice O'Loughlin came out on top. Greta Bodie probably would have been close to on top. She did miss a game though, which just lowered her rating slightly. Missed 2 games, sorry. And Alice O'Loughlin missed 1. Anyway, both of them outstanding. Alice O'Loughlin, 22. She had an outstanding final series. She kicked 2 goals in the prelim final and then 3 goals in the grand final. Really good year from her. Aileen Gilroy from Hawthorn, outstanding season. Gabby O'Sullivan from Fremantle. Courtney Hodder from Brisbane. Talia Randall from North Melbourne. The list goes on, but I think clearly Alice O'Loughlin as the young one. Exciting times for her and for North Melbourne. Had a really good year. We jump into the final position, which is key forwards. Somewhere along here. Caitlin Gould came out on top of this list. She kicked, 20 goals for the year, average of 1.5 per game. Really outstanding year from her all round. 25-year-old, so plenty of years left for her in that Adelaide forward line and positive signs. Jacqueline Parry from Geelong, averaged just over a goal a game. Really good year. Jessie Wardlaw from St Kilda averaged 1.2 goals a game. Good season from her. Aisling Maloney from Geelong, 1.9, so has the highest average goals per game of anyone in the AFLW this year. Really, really good return from her. Ty from Fremantle also averaged over 1.2 goals a game, as did Aine McDonough. And then someone else that averaged 1.5, there was a couple more, were Kate Sherlaw for North Melbourne, right smack bang on 1.5. slightly over 1.5, Taylor Smith from Brisbane, who kicked 22 goals for the season. Obviously kicked the most for the year, but didn't average the most because Geelong only played 11 games, whereas Brisbane ended up with 14. And yeah, that's it. That averaged 1.5 or more. Still, plenty of good talent in there. Plenty of good seasons from plenty of good forwards. We'll jump into best and fairest now. MVPs. Just like the last one, and my MVPs are in the second column. Far column is who actually won the BNFs for the club. As you'll see, there's no percentage on the screen either because reasons. But that's okay. Ebony Marinoff, clearly Adelaide's best. I don't think there's going to be too many arguments there. I went Isabel Dawes over Ali Anderson for Brisbane. Interestingly, both outstanding seasons. There's no doubt about it. I just really think that Isabel Dawes was worthy of this one for whatever reason. They both had very good seasons, so you could argue either way. Isabel Dawes just slightly came out on top in terms of ratings for whatever reason. It is what it is. Both fantastic players. Carlton, I went way different than their BNF. Keely Shearer got it in their official BNF, which she was only just behind Harriet Cordner in mine, like very, very close. One vote in it, but key defender, Harriet, and really good season from her. Collingwood, I'm going to butcher her name and I apologise to her. I just will never get it right. Ruby Schleicher, close, wins both MVP and best and fairest. I think was Collingwood's best player that pretty much played all the games. Both Bree Davey and Brittany Benici would have been up there if they hadn't missed games. Brittany Benici missed 2. Bree Davey obviously missed like 6 games, I think. So they missed quite a few, but still worthy winner, Ruby Schleicher. For the Bombers, Maddie Gay won the best and fairest, whereas Georgia Nanscombe gets the my award for MVP. Both outstanding seasons. They both were their best 2 players this year. I think undoubtedly really good seasons from both of them. Could have gone either way in mine. I'm not exactly sure on the voting system for their official best and fairest. Could have gone either way though. Both really outstanding seasons. Next up, we've got the Fremantle Dockers. No doubt about this. Mim Strong obviously deserves it. And she wins it for both awards. Really outstanding season from her. And, I mean, it's potentially only going to get better, which is a really positive sign for Fremantle. Geelong. I've got Nina Morrison, as did the club. Really outstanding young midfielder. Positive signs for her. There's a few good young ones coming through as well, so still plenty of positive signs for Geelong, even though they had a bit of a disappointing season. For Gold Coast, clear standout was Charlie Rowbottom. I mean, she won both and undoubtedly deserved to win both. Nobody really that close to her in the MVP voting. GWS, it goes to Rebecca Beeson in both. Pretty happy with that. Apparently for both, Zoe Goldsworthy was the only one close-ish, I think. Maybe Alice Parker as well for my MVP voting. Hawthorn, I've gone Lucy Wales over Emily Bates, over Emily Bates in my voting, whereas they went in their BNF, Eliza West. All 3 of them, I think, were really good seasons. Emily Bates missed a game, which dropped her below Lucy Wales. But Lucy Wales, outstanding season in the ruck. I think I'm happy with her winning that one. Kate Hoare wins them both for Melbourne. Outstanding season from her. Eliza McNamara may be close, but nobody else really that close to her. North Melbourne, Jasmine Garner. I mean, it's a fantastic team, this North Melbourne team. Plenty of players that would have been close in other teams, but Jasmine Garner clearly outstanding. Ash Riddell was really good. Mia King was good. Sarah Wright, Emma King, plenty of good players. Next up, Port Adelaide. We've got Abby Dowrick getting the win just over Maria Maloney, Matilda Scholes, whereas in the official Port Adelaide one, it went to Matilda Scholes, who was outstanding, don't get me wrong. Abby Dowrick also, though, was fantastic this year. Richmond, no surprise here. Mon Conti gets it for both. Really outstanding season. Clearly their most important and best player this year. Interestingly, the one who comes second in my voting was Elise Sharon, who is leaving Richmond for North Melbourne. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for the North Melbourne and Richmond clubs. St Kilda, we've gone with Jamie Lambert, who also won theirs. It was close-ish in the MVP. Tiana Smith was right behind her before Serene Watson and Paige Trujigen. Sydney, Sophia Hurley, both mine and Sydney's official BNF. She won at both. Brianna Tarrant was not too far behind her. Laura Gardner had a good season. Tanya Kennedy as well. But Sophia Hurley, really good young midfielder. 20 years old. Really bright future ahead of her as well. West Coast, both goes to Ella Roberts, another 20-year-old midfielder. So a lot of good young players coming through this AFLW competition. Really outstanding season from her again. She was really good last year. Another good one they have is Charlotte Thomas, who came third in my voting. Alison Drennan was second. And final club is the Bulldogs. Isabel Pritchard wins it for both. Obviously, Ellie Blackburn was probably on track until she got injured and missed half the season, or more than half the season. She only played 3 games. But Isabel Pritchard, I think, deserves it by a fair way on this Bulldogs team. They're not the most dominant team ever, but yeah, that's how it comes out. So that is everything from 2024 wrapped. I want to thank you all, anyone that's tuned in. If you're still watching this, I do greatly appreciate it. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Spotify, make sure you hit all those buttons. I want to thank you all, though. It's been a great season. 81 episodes of the podcast, plenty more videos on the YouTube channel, plenty of shorts, plenty of TikToks, plenty of Instagram posts, and it's only going to be bigger next year. This was just the start. Next year we're going to come in with an intro video, intro music. We're going to have a lot more stuff coming in. We're going to have guests. We're going to be looking at Supercoach. We're going to be looking at everything. So stick around. I want to thank you all for being here. Come back next year. We'll be back on January 8th for the first episode of the podcast for next year. We're going big next year, so stick around. I can't wait for it. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you let me know down in the comments what you want to see in 2025 from All Aussie Rules. That's our wrapped up episode. That's 2024. See ya next year.